Hey guys, it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So I am back with another recommendations video. I feel like I keep telling myself that I'm going to do more recommendations and then I don't, but we're here today. So today I want to recommend something that I really enjoy in any book that I decide to pick up. And that is any book that involves a podcast element and then any book that has like mixed media as a part of the storytelling. Now, when it comes to the podcast, there are a lot of books out there that mention like podcasters. Like one of the characters is a podcaster, and 9 times out of 10, they're like a true crime podcaster. But the books that I am going to mention is like podcast is one of the main elements in the story. The podcast is incorporated into the story as well. And it's the same thing with mixed media. What I consider to be mixed media is anytime like emails, text messages, letters, interviews, anything like that, that's a really big part of the story. Now, of course, we have those stories where that might be in there, here or there, but no, the mixed media is the main part of how the story is being told, and I absolutely love it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start first with the books that I would highly recommend to you guys that have a podcast element. The first one that we have is Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. So this one follows this woman, Lucy, who years ago, her best friend, Savvy, was murdered, but Lucy does not necessarily remember what happened the night that her friend was murdered, and a lot of people in her hometown thought that she had something to do with it. So she has moved away, but at a certain point, she is about to head back to her hometown for her grandmother's birthday, and she finds out that this podcaster is there and wants to have her on the show and figure out what happened that night. I really enjoyed this. I like the characters. I really like the podcast element because we're following it for different episodes. And like I said, it's a really big part of the story and how we are finding information out about what happened that night. I thought the characters were really quirky. I know that some people don't really like an amnesia trope, but for me, it worked in this story. I would highly recommend listening to this on audiobook if you want that full podcast experience, but I really enjoyed this one. Another one that I want to recommend, and I'm sure everybody has probably recommended this one, but this is one of my favorite books by Lisa Jewell, None of This Is True. And so in this one, we are following two characters, Josie and Alex, and they essentially one night find out that they are birthday twins. Their birthday is on the same day. And so Josie knows that Alex is a really popular podcaster. And so they end up meeting up again randomly. And Josie approaches Alex and tells Alex that she would like to be featured on her podcast because she has a story to tell. And boy, is her story something that you want to listen to. So again, this one really does a good job with using the podcast as the main element in the story. This is how we are finding out a lot about Josie in this story that she really wants to tell. It also has an element in here as well where parts of this like podcast are then being turned into like a Netflix show. So you're kind of getting a 2-for-1. You're getting this podcast element, but then you're getting like a show in there as well. This is another one that I would also recommend listening to on audio so that you get the full effect. And I think they do a really good job with differentiating the podcast between this show that they're also trying to produce as well. I also thought this one was pretty twisty. I like the way that this one ended. And yeah, this is one that I would definitely recommend. If you have not picked up anything by Lisa Jewell, I would suggest that you start here. Another one that I have, and this is a newer book this year, this is Tell Me What You Did by Carter Wilson. And so in this one, we are following Poe, and she is the podcast host for her popular podcast. Is called Tell Me What You Did. And basically what she does is she invites people onto her podcast so that they can confess any crimes that they may have committed. And it's supposed to be like a judge-free space, but she does give her guests the warning that like, hey, understand that you are confessing to a crime that you committed. So I have no control over whether or not like police or FBI or anybody is listening. So tell the story on your own free will. So in the beginning, we find out that Poe's mother was murdered, and Poe had ended up killing her mother's murderer years later. Now she is in the middle of taping one of her episodes, and the guy that she is interviewing admits to her that he is the one that killed her mother, and the story takes off from there. I have recently read this. I enjoyed it. It is a little bit on the longer side. I, however, did not listen to this one on audio. I read it physically, but it did not take away from like the podcast element. And the podcast element is a huge story because throughout the story, she is on a live stream with this guy who was forcing her to tell the story of how she quote unquote murdered her mother's murderer. So it was really entertaining, and I would probably suggest also check this out on audiobook if you want the true podcast element feel. Another one that I enjoyed, and this is a two-parter. So this is The Night Swim by Megan Golden. So this is the first book in the Rachel Crawl series, and then the second book is Dark Corners. So in this first book, Rachel is a podcaster, and she is going to this town because she talks about true crime cases. Lots of the time that she's talking about them, they are like unsolved cases or cases that have already been like wrapped up. But she has decided that she is going to go to this small town so that she can cover this case in real time. And it is about this, I think he's like in high school, maybe either high school or college, but he's a swimmer and he has been accused of sexually assaulting someone. And so she is covering the case in real time. And so there is a podcast element because her coverage of the case is featured on the podcast. There's some other things that's going on with Rachel, and she's kind of wrapped up into another mystery. And so there's some other stuff that's going on with Rachel in her personal life, and there's a mystery with that that's also kind of tied into this case that she's following as well. At the time that I read this, this was like one of the first books that I listened to that had a podcast element, and I just felt like it really opened up the doors for how I feel about these. I did listen to this one on audio, so again, I would highly recommend listening to it on audio. Now, the second book in the series, Dark Corner, we're also following Rachel. She is doing another podcast, but she has been specifically called in to help with this particular case where a social media influencer has gone missing. This one was also pretty twisty. It went in some directions that were slightly predictable, but a lot of directions that I did not see coming. And it also really talked a lot about like the social media influencer culture. So if that's something that you want to read more about, I think this is a good one. Also, it does include her podcast once again, so that is a huge part of the story as well. So the last book that I want to talk about as far as like books that I have enjoyed with the podcast element, this one has the perfect mix between the podcast element and the mixed media element, and that is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. You guys know I love me some Holly Jackson, and it all started with this series. I do have a series review on my channel. It's like my most popular video on my channel, so I will have that video linked down below in case you guys are interested. But the first book in the series, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, it just includes a lot of mixed media. So in this one, we're following high school student Pip. She's a senior. She's working on her capstone project, and for her project, she decides that she is going to look into the case of a student that was murdered a few years before, and everyone had thought that that student's boyfriend had something to do with it, and Pip decides that she is going to try to figure it out. So this includes a lot of her like capstone notes, interviews that the police conducted. There's like a couple of maps in here. So it contains a lot of different mixed media. I absolutely loved it. And I think a reason why I ended up loving this so much was because of the mixed media and how it was incorporated into the story. Now, in the last two books, so Good Girl, Bad Blood, and As Good as Dead, that is where we get the incorporation of not only the mixed media, but the podcast element. So in book 2, our main character, Pip, she has started a really popular podcast where she is looking into true crime cases, and it's kind of like a continuation on from the first book. I enjoyed both of these. The third book in the series definitely takes a turn, but again, all of these books contain either or that podcast element or the mixed media element that I love so much. So the last few books that I want to talk about are all books that I have enjoyed that actually uses the mixed media format as a way to tell the story. The first one being episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. This is horror. All of the other ones that I've talked about are like mystery thrillers, but this is horror, and I have one other horror one that I want to talk about as well. So in this one, we follow these paranormal investigators. They are working on episode 13. They are going to like this abandoned mansion to film some paranormal activity, and things go awry. This is told strictly in like their diary entries, emails, text messages, interviews. It also has transcripts of the show that they're putting together, their episode 13. I think it's amazing when an author can convey a full story through mixed media. That's, like I said, that's how this story is told. I feel like you can tell that all of these characters are different. They all play a different role. Parts of this is creepy. Parts of this I found to be kind of funny. And I had a really good time with this one. Now, I did not listen to this on audio. I have heard that people have enjoyed the audio. So if you are an audiobook listener, then I would highly suggest listening to this one to see how you like it. But other than that, even though I did not listen to it on audio, it did not take away from my experience with this book, and I really enjoyed it. Another one that uses mixed media, that is how the story is told. This is The Appeal by Janice Hallett. And so in this one, we are following this group of people. They go around and they put on a lot of plays. The director of this group, he tells them that his young granddaughter has a really rare form of cancer, and he needs everybody to help them raise money so that they can pay for the treatment for his granddaughter. We're following all of these characters, and it's told primarily through emails. All of these correspondences between all the characters primarily are through emails. There are some text messages throughout, but mostly just emails. And for a while, you are just watching these characters try to figure out ways to raise money for this family until a murder happens. I never thought that this sounded like something that I would enjoy. I'm not like a theater person, so I wasn't really sure how I was going to connect with the story. I liked how it was put together. Again, I liked how at a certain point, once you get used to all the characters, because there are a lot of characters in this, you really can tell how the author made all of the characters really distinct. And so even though I didn't think like the reveal at the end was that surprising, I did like the journey to the end. And if you like reading a lot of emails, then you would like this. And I have purchased a few other books by this author because she specializes in telling her stories through mixed media, and I can't wait to read more. The next one I have is a horror one, and we're gonna put like an asterisk next to this one. So this is Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but this one doesn't necessarily use mixed media. It uses a lot of pictures. And I think that that really added to the reading experience. And that's why I am including this as one I think you guys should read. So in this one, we're following this girl, Mallory, and she has just gotten a job with this family to help babysit their young son, Teddy. And come to find out, Teddy has this imaginary friend, which is problem number one. And she is told that he has been drawing these pictures of this imaginary friend. And throughout the story, the pictures get more graphic of this imaginary friend, but then they start to get really elaborate. And so you're following Mallory as she is getting spooked by this imaginary friend, and she starts to learn more about what's going on with Teddy and this fake person. I thought the pictures in here were extremely creepy. Like, I'm sorry, I don't think I would be able to babysit for somebody who is drawing pictures of an imaginary person. I don't think that I could do that. But they kind of start off like this. I don't know about you, but that creeps me out. And then they kind of like end up like something like this. And the quality of the pictures throughout the story just change. This is one that I would highly recommend you read physically. Now, if you are an audiobook listener, that's all you like to listen to, fine. But I think you would enjoy it better if you had the physical book to go along so that you could see these pictures, because I love that the author not only just tried to describe them, but also showed us what these pictures look like, and it really added to the overall reading experience. So the next two books that I want to talk about, they are kind of the same thing, just with like different characters and written by different authors, but they are told primarily in interview format. And so the first one is The Revival of Opal and Nev by Donnie Walton. And then the other one is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So in Daisy Jones and the Six, we are following Daisy, and she is a singer and she joins this band. And so we're kind of like getting the ins and outs of this band, how they rose to fame, how they all came together, the ins and outs of like all of the drama and the relationships and the sex and drugs and just what rock stars go through. This was really entertaining. I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, because I read this a few years ago at this point, there is some music that is incorporated in this as well, just a little bit. So I would highly suggest listening to this on audio. So this one is the same, The Revival of Opal and Nev. So in this one, we are following Opal. She's a singer and she ends up joining up with a British singer-songwriter, Nev, and they formed this really popular group. Takes place in like the 70s. And so we're just following the ins and outs of this duo and the things that they experienced, the racism that they experienced in the 1970s. There was this huge event that takes place that kind of contributed to the downfall of this group. And again, this is one that I would listen to on audio. You guys know how I feel about footnotes. I hate them. This has footnotes in it, but I think listening to the audio, they incorporated them so well that I couldn't even tell that they were footnotes. So again, this is one that I would definitely check out on audio. So then next up, this is one that I thought was very entertaining. I was more entertained by this than I thought I was going to be, but this is Devolution by Max Brooks. You might be familiar with this author because they wrote World War Z, which was also turned into a really popular movie, which I love. I have that book. I have not read it yet, but I love the movie. So in this one, we are following the journal entries written by this woman named Kate. And Kate and a group of people were going to like this exclusive community, and something happens, I think, where they like lose power and they're like kind of stranded out there, and Bigfoot comes and they are trying to survive. So this is like part of a horror story, part of a survival story. If you are interested and amazed by like Bigfoot, then this one will be a story for you. It's primarily told from her journal entries. There are also like news articles. I think there are like some interviews in here as well, because they're recounting the story of actually what happened. This is another one that I listened to on audio and would recommend the audio. So next up, a fun one that I have is Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. This one follows these group of people who work at this like store, and every time they come back to the store, they notice that somebody has been like vandalizing the store. And so a group of them have decided that they are going to spend the night in the store to figure out what's happening, and it like takes off from there. This is another one. I don't think it's necessarily one of my favorite by Grady Hendrix, but I think this is definitely one of those books that I found to be very entertaining. I think you should listen to the audio and read this physically as well. And this book kind of is in the format of like a catalog. So you get stuff like this in here. And at the start of another chapter, it's like showing you a different item And these items and how they're described kind of like relate back to the story. And then you get like pictures like this. When I first read this, I actually listened to it. And then because I enjoyed it enough, I wanted to go ahead and grab a physical copy. And once I actually like flipped through, I really wished I would have done both, because the narration for this was really good, especially how they narrate like the beginning of each chapter. So I think if you have not read anything by Grady Hendrix and you're looking to start somewhere, this would be a good place to start. Again, I would make sure you have the physical book around if you are going to listen to this on audio. So then the next one that I want to recommend is actually a series. This is the Themis File. This is sci-fi. So the first one we have is Sleeping Giants. Then we have Waking Gods, and the conclusion, Only Human. So these are primarily told in interview format, which again is a really great way to tell this type of story. So in this one, it starts off with this little girl. Her name is Rose. She's riding her bike and she falls in a hole. But not only did she fall in a hole, but she fell in the hole, but she landed on like this robot's like hand. And years later, she has become like a scientist. She has a really big group and they are trying to figure out what this is, where it came from. And over the course of the story, you know that these robots are found in different parts of the world and some stuff happens. This was one of like the first sci-fi books that I read. And I was like, oh, if sci-fi can be like this, I am all in. This is another one where I did not listen to this on audio, so I can't say whether or not the audio was good, but I'm gonna assume that if it's told in interview format, you might wanna check out the audio. But this is one of the ones where I read it physically. It did not take away from my reading experience. I really like this. I don't think this is a series I have heard enough people talk about. It's a few years old, but it is so good. And if you like the mixed media format, this is one that I would highly recommend. So the last book that includes the mixed media format, and this one is also told in just straight interviews. This is Kill Show by Daniel Swearin Becker. So this is like written like a true crime, but it's more of just like a mystery. And so we're following these parents, and at the start of it, their daughter goes missing. She was last seen getting off the bus at school. And so after the parents do like their spiel on the news about wanting to find their daughter and needing all the help, they are then contacted by this documentary crew who wants to document this in like real time. And so there's a lot of drama going on behind the scenes with like this documentary. We learn some more things about this disappearance and how it may not be what it seems. There's a lot of interviews with people in the missing girl's life, like her coworkers, her friends, her teachers. And of course, mainly we're hearing from her parents. I thought this was a really good story. And like I said, it really does feel like true crime, but it has all of these other elements that are mixed in as well. And I think that you guys would really enjoy it. So that is all that I have for you guys. These are all of the books that I would recommend that I have enjoyed that include the podcast and mixed media elements. Now, if you have read any of these, please let me know your thoughts down below. If you have any more to recommend, please also let me know that down below, because this is my favorite way to take in books. And so I would like more recommendations, but I will see you guys next time. Bye.